Introducing the DITTO Auto Lock, made with locking strap ends for an easy-to-use, clip-on system. When you're done, just pull the latch and slide it off. Keep your guitar on lock with the DITTO Auto Lock.
Doing his best Mike Sullivan right there is Ross Hurt. Ross, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Ross is in D.C. in his own little warehouse space there, and I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, staying safe. Ross is joining us today because of his band Burial Waves, but if you quickly noticed and familiar with his voice, he's also the guy behind the Rigs of Dad podcast and Instagram. But before we get to Rigs of Dad, tell me about Burial Waves and kind of like, it's the who's who of the D.C. Baltimore area, and I know that you'll say it's the who's who's of who cares, but I'm not going to say that.
Yeah, that's how I'd put it. But yeah, it's myself, and honestly, it's just a group of guys that have been in probably too many bands over the years that have all shared the stage in some capacity or anything of the sort, but we've never actually been in a band together. My old band, Black Clouds, ended rather unceremoniously, and the drummer and myself were kind of like, how can we keep something going? Like, we still have all these ideas and things we want to do. And Kyle from pianos just happened to be like, hey, if you guys are up for doing something, I love Black Clouds. I'd love to do something. And soon after that, we approached Kevin, who's a guitarist, to play bass. I switched from bass to play guitar, and then we have Matt, who's an insanely talented bassist from Deleted Scenes or The Effects. It's like, do you want to play guitar as well? So it's kind of like a weird, hodgepodge of DC, Baltimore dudes that, we've all been friends. It just made sense for the longest time. We just never did it.
And Kyle, just to put that out there, because I don't want anyone to be confused or worried, is, Pianos isn't quitting. This is just, another band for another,
Yeah, very much active. They're actually recording an album right now, which is why he's not here. Otherwise, I'd probably convince him to hold the camera or something like that.
Put him to work.
Yeah.
Well, before we get into the gear, which I know everyone's excited to hear, I want to talk to you briefly about Rigs of Dad and how did it get started, because it's one of my favorite follows on Instagram. It's kind of the reason I open up the app, because a lot of it sometimes is just garbage, to be honest. But that is the one that gets me to come back, because it just makes me laugh. And it's so relatable to whether it's a story or the image. Man, I'm just curious how it started and how you've been able to carry it on this long.
Yeah, so that was, it was like 6 or 7 years ago. I was just out with some friends drinking, and we were just kicking around the idea of we should start a dad band where we're just way more focused on the hangs and cracking open a couple cold ones than actually bothering to learn songs or anything like that. Like, yeah, we'll play a Puddle Mud song here or there, but like for the most part, like, let's get some beers in the Marshall fridge and let's just hang out. Let's like buy some fresh black denim and not even break it in, not break the band in, just break the fridge open. And it just kind of like started as a text thread like that, and then turned into an Instagram thing, and it just kind of went from there. But I think what makes it relatable is, you've probably played shows with these dudes before. I know I have. Like the first show I ever played was like for dudes that like either worked at Guitar Center or wanted to work at Guitar Center, you know?
Yeah.
And it was an eye-opening experience. And you know, if you've worked in an office job, you've had the guy who works downstairs come up and be like, you should come check out my show. And it's just, we all know those people. And
Yeah, it's not even like within the guitar community. It's like, that's what's so great about it. Like you're kind of alluding to there with the office environment where it's like, you know, that sketchy guy that, you know, comes in twice a week to refill the Culligan water coolers. He's telling you about his band that plays from 6 to 10 at the Chug Suckle. So like,
yeah.
we all know those people.
Yeah.
It's just like perfect.
Yeah. They're a special bunch, and I genuinely love it. I don't try and knock it. I try and make it more of something that's just a fun, and yeah, I embrace the dad rock vibe.
I feel like, do you ever have any, I mean, like issue with the gear companies that are featured in it? Because like, you know, you do go gear in the caption that you write and put with the photo, you know, a lot of times with Sleep Parker Flies. Have any of those gear companies ever like reached out to you and said, hey man, cut us some slack, or some people like they lean into it?
Some people lean into it. Yeah, I mean, it like, I think the ones that like get the brunt of it, you know, are not necessarily like, I don't think it's because they're bad instruments. It's never been about like, this is a piece of shit sort of thing. It's more of just like, we all know that this is synonymous with affordable. And since most of these dudes are probably paying tuition somewhere, like, they're probably not like, well, I could buy this matchless combo. Yeah, my wife will go for that. Or it's more just like, or it'll be my ex-wife and I have this matchless combo, but I'd rather have like the crate amp with the Epiphone as opposed to the Les Paul custom Gibson version. So I don't get flack from a lot of the companies. Like I think a lot of the companies that pop up on there have a keen awareness to it.
Yeah. And then one last thing about Rick's Day Before Pop-Up is that the Instagram, I don't know how that worked out, but now you're doing a podcast that started, early 2020, I believe, or did it end 2019? Yeah,
so right now we are in the venue that my wife and I own downtown. We used to the band used to practice at our house. Since COVID hit, we can't practice at our house, and we're not able to open doors here. So we've just been practicing here, and with when you run a venue and your doors are closed, you're kind of just like, all right, well, is this $1,800 going to float me for the entire year? So I was just like, I need to do something else. I need to do something different. So the Instagram page has I'm so grateful for it, opened up so many incredible doors and started some fantastic relationships with people that love to talk gear, love to talk, like tell stories about, being musicians and stuff like that. And that's something that's always fascinated me. I've always been an avid rig rundown watcher. So, without trying to steal your thunder or anyone else's like interview thunder, I was kind of just like, I would love to share some of these stories with people. I like the weird part of it is years ago, I ran into Henry Rollins at Starbucks at like midnight. It was closed. He was just out front, just writing in a notebook. And I just was kind of like, hey, like, I just have to say, like, take a minute to just say, like, I wouldn't be who I was if it wasn't for you. And thank you. And he sat there and talked to me for like an hour and a half. And
wow.
I think about that conversation almost every day because it was just so inspiring. And it was one of those things that it's like, I wish I fucking recorded this and I wish I could share this with everyone because it was so enlightening. And this is pretty much the only way I'm able to pay that forward in any capacity. So that's the long version of why I started the podcast.
Henry is such a rad dude. He's an inspiration, not only from like a musician standpoint, a human being, but also like as like a traveler. Like the way he goes about to see the world is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean that we talked about that a lot, and his story is always, what is your story? And that's kind of where his story starts, and I think that's just such a fascinating outlook on life, and I mean, you do enough of these interviews to know that that's, nothing short of inspiring when you hear people talk about their story, talk about their gear, talk about, their identity and everything of the sorts. It's awesome. So yeah, I love sharing that stuff.
Well, enough of the formalities and kind of throwing that stuff out there with the band. Got the Riggs dad. Let's talk about gear. I'm going to use one of your patented phrases, the riff rifle. What is the riff rifle that is in your hands right now?
Yeah. So this is Sasha Dunable makes just incredible guitars. I don't need to tell you that. They pop up on your show all the time. This is, I've had so many from him, particularly Cyclopses. This is, I think, my 5th Cyclops from him. And this is the only one where I think that I nailed it. He nails it every time. But this is the only one where I nailed it and was like, I messed this up like 5 times. So yeah, it took 5 times for me to get it right. And essentially, he walked me through it to the best of his ability the first couple times, but kept kind of being like, if you want to do that, sure. But this time I learned from all my mistakes and made this exactly how I wanted to. And
what were some of the mistakes, or what was some of the things that led to this one?
Just not really having a firm understanding about some of the tone woods that go into some stuff. Not thinking about the weight that like anything from like tuning pegs might have, to the different kinds of woods, to the snappiness of something like maple fretboards versus like kind of a warmer rosewood sort of thing, and ebony is kind of right in the middle there, at least for me. And then pickups. I mean, he was kind of new in pickups when I started getting builds from him, and now he's just absolutely completely mastered it. But I didn't know what kind of pickup I wanted from him, so now I know what I want from him at all times, and he nails it.
What is it? What is what you want from him, and what are the ingredients in this one? This cherry.
Yeah, so this this is TV yellow. It probably just looks weird on the camera, but it's antique TV yellow. I've always wanted a antique TV yellow double cut Les Paul, like ever since I was a kid. I just thought it was the coolest thing ever, and he was able to build kind of just something as close to it as I would have wanted to, with the exception of the pickups and stuff, obviously. But this is a mahogany body and a maple neck, ebony fretboard, pearl, block inlays, Grover tuners, and then the pickups, which was a learning curve for me, was this is a Grizzly in the bridge, which is one of his pickups, and then in the neck I have underwound, like kind of half wound banana slug, which he doesn't really market that much, but they're just chimey and but still like really warm. And if I'm clean, I'm always on the neck, and if I'm like really pushing it, then I'm always I try and stay on the bridge as much as possible. But he really nailed it with this neck one. And this was kind of, when it comes to learning from mistakes, my backup. I have another one, which I could pull out if you want, but is the same sort of deal. And it was, I had another Cyclops that was black burst with metal, an aluminum Robot Graves neck. And
wow.
I just needed a backup. And I hit him up and was like, hey, what do you have that like maybe someone bailed after the deposit, you haven't gotten the final balance? What do you have laying around that you just can't sell? Because I need a backup, and I need something different than a aluminum neck, because it's very Albini, and I need something warmer.
Yeah.
And he was like, if you're man enough for this one, it's a shell pink Dunable. He was like, I could get it out in no time. And he swapped out the pickups, and everything I had before that was Swamp Ash bodies. My bass is Swamp Ash. But this was mahogany. I didn't really have a choice in it because it was pre-made. Mahogany, maple neck, ebony fretboard. And I got this and just completely fell in love with it.
Huh.
So the only thing that I've really changed from this one to that one is, instead of the trapeze, I have a stop tailpiece on that one. Which, yeah, they're all the same. Like, when I play this one, I definitely have some fun behind here. And that one has coil taps so I could split them if needed, particularly tracking or anything like that. I never really do that live, but tracking I will all the time. Yeah, so those are like my two. That's my main one. This is like dream guitar number one, and this is kind of not my beater, but it's definitely taken some abuse.
All right, Ross, what do you typically use for strings and tunings with the Cyclops?
So for these, because I'm like a bassist at heart, I have really just stubborn and heavy hands, and so I do 12 through 52s on these guys. We play in D standard for most of it, sometimes drop C. But for the most part, it's D standard. So 12 to 52s. I just started on 10s and just realized even just hitting an open E, I was just hitting it so hard. It just, every time I hit a chord or fretted a note, it just sounded like the intonation was terrible, which I know is not the case. It's me.
All right, well, how about we maybe talk about your amp setup, and then we'll dive into your magnificent pedal board. Well, unless there's something else back there you want to talk about.
So this one is turning into my Frankenstein. This is a Jazzmasters Squire that I've really kind of ripped apart. This one is actually, these are 10s through 52s because the tuning is just CG, CG, CG.
Okay.
So we have a couple songs that I just like do a lot of, like, you know, just like weird, like Discord stuff and some kind of like open, like drone note stuff that I love. That's just, whoa. Like riffs like that where I would not be able to pull that off if it required tapping. so I just kind of did that. And then the other Jazzmaster that Matt has is the Troy Van Leeuwen one. And I've had a couple Jazzmasters over the years, and I fell in love with that one mainly because I use the rhythm switch all the time, and I'm obsessed with the Troy Van Leeuwen, like easy metal up and down one, whether you use it as a kill switch or anything like that. And once I fell in love with that one, I started just ripping apart the Mascus. So I put a this is a stay trem bridge, mastery vibrato, changed the knobs, which is just whatever. And then I found this toggle switch, and it just changed everything for me. And then Sasha, a couple months ago, was like, hey, do you have a Jazzmaster? I said, yeah. He said, okay, well, I found a way to actually replicate your pickups into Jazzmaster sizes.
Wow.
So these are the Dunable Jazzer size Grizzlies in here. So before, when I would have to switch from one guitar to the other to single coils, or in the Mascus instance, the P90 sort of thing, I needed something more. I would always just put like an EP boost at the beginning of the chain or something like that to give it just a little bit. And then when Sasha started doing that, it changed everything for me. So
did he do anything to the circuit, or not the circuitry, or the winding and everything with the actual like wire he uses, or is it literally just the same pickup just housed in a different kind of configuration?
It's pretty much the same thing but housed differently. And the way it, I don't know how they fit all that beef and power into that enclosure. And it's it's waxed in there and stuff like that. Like when I was putting them in, I was kind of like, oh, I think I texted him like, can I get this color cover? Or actually don't even send covers for it because I'll just fit them in whatever. But they come completely covered and encased because it is a full just unit on its own.
Okay. Well, should we get, I don't know if I want to call it number 1 or number 5, but we'll let you decide how we should call that one. Your main ride there, and hear what your amps are and your pedal board?
Yeah. So I went down the rabbit hole of super nerd amp stuff recently, and Black Clouds was a stereo setup band, and I always liked the way to do it stereo with a lot of texture and ambiance and stuff like that. So a lot of the delay stuff is stereo. So I have always run a stereo rig, and I always had kind of two 212s with a head on my side of the stage, and then on the other side of the stage was twin reverb on top of Matt's JC120, and that would get the stereo thing. And then I would always kind of have like a little bit of signal loss issues or just shit getting lost in the mix. So I swapped it to now I run everything wet, dry, wet. So it's I have a dry amp, which is the Music Man HD 130, and that goes into this closed back orange 212. Okay. The orange 212 is just the best cabinet. It's awesome, and I don't need a 412, but that thing does all the work for me, and it's just dark and warm, and I like thicker, darker sounds as opposed to brighter. So that cabinet is my dry and my main sound, and then I realized that the difference between having just stereo full wet and wet dry wet is literally just the small little quilter head that I've had for a while. And those things are amazing. They're insanely powerful. They sound remarkable. They react, and you're able to interact with it just like you would with a tube amp. It's mind blowing the way that they were able to dial that stuff in. So I have a quilter tone block that goes into this 212 that it's unnamed 212. Found it at this place called Atomic Music in Beltsville, Maryland. It's just kind of a beater cab, but what I was able to do is I was able to tone match it almost identical to my twin. And then when the twin Tone Masters came out, and you have the attenuator on the back, and you could give it like a little bit of gain and dirt on there, it changed everything. I was like, well, one, it's lighter, and two, it just has a little bit of extra dirt, so no matter what room you're in, you could adjust for that, and it complements. Those two just almost sound identical.
Really?
Yeah. So it's like for the stereo bouncing back and forth, it's great, and then having the dry be a little low, it's awesome.
Do you know which the speakers are in the no-name cab that you picked up?
Yeah. It's on one of them is an Eminence Redcoat, and then the other one is Eminence Legend. Okay. Which I did kind of a lot of digging because the orange is V30s, and had to change the ohmage to 8 ohms, but those are V30s, and then I just kind of did some nerd searching for right in between V30 and Fender Twin, and it seemed like the thing that I found. I didn't do a lot of trial and error. I just kind of did the dorky forum stuff and found that those two were pretty good. So it worked, and when I tried it in the shop, I was like, this is pretty good on its own. So
well, right on. Should we move on to your pedal board and kind of see how this all kind of works in flight?
Yeah, sure. So first thing is just everything just goes into a tuner. First and foremost, just chord, pitch black, nothing special. Then after that, it goes into this Z-Cat, which is a big, it's called the big reverb, and it's like a spring reverb, and I used to have it at the very end of my chain, and I had this cool box that Ryan from Fuzzrocious built me where I could actually move it to the front of the chain if I wanted to and stuff like that on the fly, and I found myself doing a lot of cool pad sound stuff with the mix turned all the way up on this reverb. It's a gorgeous sounding reverb. So I had that pretty much front of chain, so I could do some weird kind of creepy floaty stuff that pops in and out. After that, it goes into the Digitech Drop, which I use either for mainly octave down, like you heard at the beginning, or sometimes we go step and a half down for some of the newer stuff. It's better than having a baritone laying around or taking it around everywhere. After that is the Digitech Freakout, which I love this thing. When I was playing bass, there was a couple songs for Black Clouds that required me to get feedback, and I used to have kind of amp. They stopped making that amp. Once that amp died, my perfect pitch feedback disappeared. So I was like, there's got to be a way to capture this. And the freak out came out. And now I almost exclusively use it as a theremin.
Okay.
So like it has just like almost a keyboard sort of sound. There's little to no, the attack is pretty much dime. So there's very little dry signal coming through when I'm using it.
I don't want to interrupt you, Ross, but maybe can we hear some of this stuff? And I know that as some of this stuff you'll explain and talk about it probably gets used in conjunction with other pedals. But yeah, let's hear the reverb and how you use the freak out too.
Sure. So the reverb in particular, I use. There's a song that we have coming out called Lightheads, and I usually have like a weird drone sample that starts off the song that and I'll kind of have that going and then just add like a little like so once this whole thing kind of goes, it gets buried underneath some of the stuff we're playing. But I'm a big Warren Ellis dork, so I like having weird droney stuff underneath. But standalone, the like it kills. Like you might be able to hear the strings on this mic, but it kills all the just like dry signal of the strings, and it works great for like really kind of pretty orchestral stuff. Yeah, so that's the reverb. The freak out I use mainly for like this kind of like so it's a little bit of attack in there from the guitar, but like it really just like
almost like an EBO.
Yeah, very similar to that. When I do like slidey stuff is when I refer to it as like the theremin sort of sound. But pretty selective with that. It's not used a lot. But it turned out to be like one of those things where it's like, man, I can't take it off the board because then this sounds like crap. The next up is the Dirty Robot by Digitech as well. And that is just a crazy synth pedal. And I really only use it for one song, but it turned out to be like the big part of the song. I use it in conjunction with the drop, and it's just like a, let me see. It's just like a. So we have a song called Cinema Shame, and that's like the main sort of thing. It's, yeah, we could do keyboard, but I like to just replicate sounds. I'm a Tom Morello kid, so that's that kind of sound.
It's like Tom Morello meets like if he was in a post-rock band.
Yeah. When I got the pedal, the first thing I did was like, oh man, I could play Subtle Body by These Arms like now with this pedal. It's a cool pedal. I haven't found a lot of uses for it, but it's a crucial part of that one song.
Do you use it in the synth or the vocal setting? Because I'm vaguely familiar with that pedal, the Dirty Robot.
The synth. So
okay.
Like, yeah, it's tied together in the settings right now with a bunch of delay sort of shit. But if I wanted to like do Stranger Things kind of sounding stuff where it'll adjust with the attack. And since, like I said, I play big and dumb, like I hit really hard, so it starts really low and then gets up there. So it's a nice build on that thing. And then after that, everything goes into the ES8, and this has become like the best like purchase ever for me. That song in particular, Cinema Shame, I started to notice that between one part and the next part, I would hit 6 pedals all at once. Not all at once, but I try to, just to like transition from one part to the next. So this just makes transitions so insanely easy. And I guess I could go through like what's in each loop, and then kind of some of the things that I love about it and tricks that I love about it.
Yeah, do it.
The first is the Mel 9, which the EHX L9. I never give this pedal consideration at all until I think it was Matt Armstrong from like Murder by Death, and Frank Iero was just like, dude, you love the Blade Runner soundtrack. You have to you have to get this thing. It'll change everything. So I did, and it definitely did. So I do like when I do those like kind of ambient like it just adds a full orchestra of I could listen to that like I told you, Brian Eno is like huge. I could listen to that all day.
Yeah, it takes you to a very calming place.
Yeah, yeah. So the Mel 9 is number 1, and that's pretty much always number 1 in the loop. After that is my main like kind of dirt, and it's Scott from Calhoun-Walled City builds these. They're it's the KWB Plus, and I think it's from what I understand, it's a kind of cloned version of an MXR Distortion Plus, but the one he had was from 1979, and I guess it had like one of these weird fucked up circuits that made it really beefy and low, unlike the other ones. And I saw him post a picture of it. I was like, dude, what is that? And he told me, and I know that I've read, I don't know for certain, but I think that's like the pedal that both Sweeney and Clay Tarver from Chavez use, and that's all I needed to know for me to be like, I'm buying one of those if possible. So that's my main like pretty much it's almost always on, just like I used to use a lot of Tube Screamer style pedals, plumes and stuff, but this thing just like the way it breaks up just seems to fit more where, especially on the lower stuff, it's just like it's all there. I mean that's bridge pickup, and it's just like just has like all this depth to it. So
yeah, because like your guys' stuff with burial waves, like especially something like the Guest is like a beefy bruiser. I don't know if that's pedal on there, but yeah, that's a lot of you have a lot of low end picking up with the guitar.
Yeah. That is that one. I didn't get that one until after we recorded, but that was man, I think that was actually the plumes that I recorded that one on.
Okay.
But I had the plumes set to an area where every one of my friends that looked at my board was like, why do you what is this for? Like, why do you even have it set like that? The next one I have is in loop 3 is the 1981 Innovations, the DRV pedal, which is similar to the original Rat, but it just gives a little bit more extra rad gain, which I love. But my favorite thing, and this is where the nerdiness of the ES8 kind of comes into play, is you could also you can move these loops around in whichever order you want on this thing. Mm-hmm. So and same with the volume block. You can move the volume pedal around to any which way. So you could even run some stuff in parallel. So like there's a couple things that we have that might have just a normal delay, no reverb on the KWB running like in one circuit where it's like, okay, like that's cool. But then you could throw the volume knob in the parallel loop of it and turn it into something that's a little more gain driven, a little more like soak like. So like you could add like rolling into it. So instead of like hard clip, here's the next part sort of thing, you could ease your way into it, which is pretty rad.
You definitely did some like instruction booklet reading with that, because a lot of people just use it as a simple like loop switcher to kind of put their pedals in line. You've used it to its full extent.
Yeah, yeah. And it was a learning curve because I was using the Line 6 HX effects before, and then it's really just with so much of this stuff, it's learning a completely different language. And once you learn the basic vocabulary, you can find your way through it, and then you focus on what you want to delve into. But yeah, the volume pedal is just Tapestry Audio Bloomery, and it was like Norman Brandon from Texas is the reason, was kind of the person that said like, oh, my favorite pedal, the most essential part of my setup is the volume pedal, because I get everything off the amp and I just love rolling into gain instead of like click, like here's the gain switch. So I use it every once in a while for that, and I love it. The fourth part of the chain is this is my super nerdy Warren Ellis dorkiness. It's the Last Gasp Audio Gomorrah fuzz, and it's like a subharmonic fuzz that is just like so gross. Where I just mainly use it for like a lot of like just like you could even just hear just the Velcro starting to rip.
Yeah.
Like that band Soons, I think it's pronounced Soons, had like the So I love that. I love listening to Warren Ellis do all of his insane. I think he uses like a Moz box or something like that, and this fuzz just fit the bill. So I use it sparingly, just like a couple just gross bit crusher. Like a couple riffs like that, but I would not be able to do it if it weren't for that pedal.
So that's a buzzsaw, man.
Yeah, I love it. So that's in the fourth one. And then the fifth one is actually this guy, which is not even a pedal. It's just a Lael P-split, which is passive. And what that is that's the dry out. So I have the dry out going into there. It's pretty much always on unless I switch to, if I do like this, like that sort of stuff, turning that on will kill. That's the only time I take loop 5 out. So that kills the dry amp. And that was actually Josh Newton hit me to that idea where he was like, yeah, if you like, why don't you try going out of a loop and use the P-split? And it's great because it has a phase inverter and it has a built-in ground transformer in there. So it kills any phasing issues or ground noise issues as well.
Josh is definitely an asset because not only is he great tech, but he's also a great musician. So like he walks both feet in both camps.
Yeah, just ultimate human being and just the raddest dude. Number 6 is I never know how to pronounce it. I don't know if it's the Reaver or the Rever or what, but it's the Old Blood Noise Endeavors Reaver, and it's cool. Like I used it a lot, and then I started to notice that when I started changing a couple things up before it in the signal, it would give off some weird gain that I didn't really like. But I found a way to use it, and now I use it a lot more than I used it before. But it's a delay, it's a reverb, it has a little bit of modulation in there, and that also has a reverse, I believe, reverb that just kind of like swoops up. So like standalone, it's just like a weird, like you could kind of hear it like pull back in sort of thing. So I do that for a lot of the drone noise stuff that I end up doing. So that's 6. And again, I run these things all over the place. I move them all around. I put them in different like parallel running series, everything of the sort. So they're all over the place. Loop 7 is where I start going in stereo. In Loop 7, the first thing is the WAMPLER TERRAFORM, which is new to me. I just started using it. And it's cool. I use chorus a little bit. I'm not a big chorus person. I use phaser every once in a while. But I'm not using a lot of the functions on here, but I'm starting to incorporate them more and more. Like, you know, here's like like you said, the guest, it's like that sort of stereo chorus thing is pretty rad, but
yeah, I love that dark chorus too, like with your tone already kind of being darker, and that adding that in there is just so haunting. Yeah,
and it actually replaced my boost pedal that I had on there, because you could just set it to the auto swell function, leave everything where it's just dry signal, but then turn up the volume a little bit, so it gave me a clean boost that I needed, and it's MIDI controlled. So with everything going in stereo in Loop 7 and 8, I just leave that shit on all the time, and I just switch between the MIDI settings on there. So the next thing I have is the POLYMON, which is probably my favorite pedal ever. It's just the craziest delay pedal. It's everything I wanted in a weird delay pedal. When I was demoing songs for Burial Waves and like started writing stuff, I became obsessed with on GarageBand. There's an amp called the Cascade amp, and then I would add a couple other things before it even goes into the interface on there. And for some reason, I love that sound, and I can never replicate it with anything until I got this pedal, and I was able to replicate the sound from GarageBand that I wanted. It sounds a little more pristine, but
otherwise you're going to be one of those. Otherwise, you're going to be one of those guys like Robert Fripp, who has like a keyboard, or not a keyboard, but like an actual MacBook or something. You'd have to cue it up that way.
No thanks. Yeah. So the POLYMON is just it's so great. And it could do everything from really weird, crazy delays to like that weird sort of phased out stereo stuff into, if needed, it could just be like a single quarter note, clean, no reverb sort of thing. So when I was doing the volume stuff, I'll run that as like a normal delay into the timeline, and Big Sky, which is more kind of soaked sound, that's number 8, is the timeline followed by the Big Sky, which is that was a crucial part of Black Clouds when we were a band, and they're just awesome. Like I love these pedals. I'm still learning the Big Sky because I never used one until this band, but it is rad. You could do so much stuff with it.
Yeah. They're like little computers.
Yeah. And that wraps it on the ES8, and then that goes out into the Ditto X2, which is just looper, either for transitions in between songs live, or the occasional like drone sound that I'll have running underneath the song for a bit. And then that goes out. The looper goes out wet, and then everything after before the last gasp in 1981, everything from there forward is dry. So that does it for my board.
Well, Ross, before we have you officially hang up your guitar for a second, can you show me maybe your favorite patch or favorite like combination, like, or your favorite sound for your rig?
Yeah.
That was I love that.
My favorite ones, like I am a sucker for those ambient swell stuff, especially this is Mel 9, POLYMON. This is pretty much everything in the kitchen sink except for any gain stuff, but that like it's just that's one of my favorites. There's let's see. I mentioned the Cascade amp sound that I love. Like that's kind of it. Sounds a little more reverb soaked than normal right now, but But yeah, just that kind of creepy soundscape texture stuff is important to me for a lot of different reasons. And then, the other stuff is just stuff that we're still kind of working on, which is, using a lot of the stuff I was mentioning, like the rolling in between like the two and stuff like that is pretty important. But I think that if I had like a signature weird sound stuff, it's in a song where it bounces between like that sort of stuff for one moment, and then like that sort of sound like the next, and and then like there is the one that I did at the opening. I think it's just listed in here as just heavy fuck, which is just like
Man, that's like going into big business territory. Jared, Jared's huge rig.
Oh yeah. God, I love that band.
Should we move over to Matthew's setup?
I haven't even hooked any of his stuff up. But I mean, I could just kind of tell it from afar, I guess. His main thing is he has the JC 120, which for us, I mean, since so much of the texture stuff depends on good clean tones, we just need amps with a lot of headrooms, hence the Music Man and stuff like that. And the Roland JC20 is just a powerhouse for that. It's like practically a keyboard amp. And he uses that Troy Van Leeuwen Jazzmaster, the older one, not the new one. I believe that is, I threw a set of Curtis Novak P90s in there recently. We every once in a while would use just the stock Jazzmaster pickups, but when he started doing some more high gain stuff, it was just taking people's heads off. So we changed them up to something a little nicer.
In the Cinema Shame video, I saw he was playing like this weird. It was a different colored Jazzmaster, and I don't know if that's his or yours. And it had like I want to say they were Joe Barden's, or at least the bridge pickup was a Joe Barden. Yeah, for sure.
Like so that was you're 100% correct. That is a Chicago Music Exchange special build Jazzmaster. So it's surf green. It's got the matching headstock, and I love that thing. And Shelby from Black Bobbin hooked me up with that one, and just what an awesome guitar and what an awesome dude. But that was one of those things where before I knew Sasha was making Grizzlies or anything like that, I wanted a humbucker sound, and the Joe Barton was kind of the only thing that I could find at the time that would give me what I was looking for. And
it kind of does both, right?
Yeah, it's a two-tone. So he always had, when Matt started using it, he always had the coil split. Because I think he had a wide range, Curtis Novak wide range in the neck, or maybe it was he had a heavier one than just a normal single coil in there, and the Barton was great, but those things are like too perfect. And Matt's also a bassist, like at heart, and originally, and it's funny, I'm a bassist, Matt's a bassist, and Kevin, who plays bass, is a guitarist. So we just kind of flipped everything around. But the Barton was like, it was too perfect. You could hear everything to a fault. Like it was just too high definition, and it's a great pickup, but we're not good enough players for that great of a pickup. So I originally threw the, when I got the, when Sasha sent me the Grizzlies for the Jazzmaster, I threw the P90s that came with the J Mascis in there. Okay. And then I liked them, but I wanted to have something a little more, defined. So that the Curtis Novak P90s were just like perfect. Again, like so much of it is the design of that guitar, the Troy Van Leeuwen one, is just perfect. Obviously, we swapped out the bridge. It's a mastery bridge. It's a mastery vibrato. because I think it came with a Mustang bridge originally, and it was just not cutting it. But everything else is pretty much the exact same. We changed the tuning pegs. Those are hip shot, the locking tuner ones, just because poke our fingers enough. Changing the locking tuners. And then his setup is pretty simple. So his board is he goes into a Ditto, which is just in case there needs to be like a loop during a transition or something like that. And then volume pedal, and after that is the Palisades by EQD. It's Earthquaker Palisades, and like I said, I love tube screamer sounds, and that's their first kind of go at it. They really nailed it with the plumes, but that one's great because it has, gain A, and then it has the second channel with it, and then it even has a boost after it. So Matt's just started kind of incorporating outside distortions and gains in, because everything else is Helix. So it's the HX effects from line 6, and I programmed all that shit so I could just be like, here's verse 1, like here's the second part, here's the bridge, here's this, and you just hit it one button, don't even think about it. And that seemed to work, because the other thing on his board is the Mastermind foot controller, which he really just uses to turn our lights on and off and stuff like that on stage. I'd like to figure out a way to control everything either via the HX effects or the Mastermind, but I just haven't. I'm not that good at MIDI yet.
We need like a second pandemic, so then you can really dive into that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and but yeah, that's kind of it. Like I'm gonna probably start incorporating a couple different drive pedals into the loops of the HX effects, and then put those blocks in certain chains and stuff. Because right now a lot of it is onboard HX stuff, which is great and fantastic, sounds good. But I'm a purist when it comes to the drive pedals and gain pedals and stuff like that.
Now, real quick, if it's able to be vocalized through words and rather than demonstrating with guitars and everything going up at once, what are your guys' role being a 2-guitar band? Are you kind of more the atmospheric guy, the helium guy, and then he's more dry, cut in middle?
Yeah, that's fair. The way I always kind of looked at it was taking the drum and bass model from Young Widows sort of thing, where it's just gross and terrifying, having really pretty floaty guitars on top. And then what I started to realize with Matt coming on board was it just made sense to just fill out some of those lost frequencies, because Kyle's voice, when he's singing, fits right in the middle. So we have the bass and the drums, and then a lot of times what Matt is doing will be dancing around the kind of bass stuff. I don't like it too much when the bass and the rhythm guitar are playing the exact same thing. Obviously, there's plenty of times where that's just needed for weight. But I like when they kind of move in and around everything. We're all DC-inspired musicians, so bands like Jawbox, bands like Fugazi, where it's they're all kind of doing their own thing independently. It just happens to work. Happens to be the case a lot of times, and then sometimes it doesn't sync up, and we're just like, all right, well, let's just double that sort of thing. But he does get high, and that's the nice thing about the HX effects is he's able to just completely flip sounds around from song to song to song. It's like having a different pedal board for each song. So there are some songs where I'm doing very low, detuned, like heavy, whether it's atmospheric stuff, textures, or heavy riffs, and he's doing really up high, either floaty, shrill sort of stuff. We haven't messed around with like the stereo chorus on the JC120 that much yet, but I know that there's a way to control that via the HX effects. We just haven't set up that 4-cable method yet.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So that probably summarizes Matt's setup, or is there anything else you want to say about that?
No, I mean he's pretty much Jazzmaster through and through. There's 2 songs where he'll hop on one of the Dunables and just to give it a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, I can't say enough good things about the HX effects stuff. I haven't used any of the full Helix amp modeling stuff, but I know that is incredible and remarkable technology. when I was using the HX effects, I wanted it for delays, verbs, and modulation stuff. And when I started, using it with Matt, it just, the possibilities and some of the stuff that we've stumbled upon in the process, because he's a very non-traditional thinker, like very kind of Johnny Greenwood in his approach to playing. So it's having all the toys that he would want in front of him on that little 8-button unit, and it's super easy to use. I was so intimidated before I got that thing that I was going to be lost, but that, man, like the fractal stuff scares me, because like the positioning of the mics and everything like that, it just seems like I would get lost in that. But that stuff is for beginners that are looking to get nerdy on sounds, tones, drives, even compression and shit like that. The HX effects is remarkable and awesome. Yeah.
It's like a foot inside the, like a kind of a learning curve that you're able to just get in there and kind of just start playing, rather than I can feel like with Fractal or even a Kemper, you might have to have like a degree of some sort.
Yeah,
at least for me. I know there's a lot of guys that are fluent out there, like Aaron Marshall from Intervals. Like I know people are really fluent in that type of technology, but for me, it's way over my head.
Oh yeah, and like and talking to those guys, like Justin from Black Clouds was Fractal, and he could, if I saw him and Asian Steve sitting together, it would just be like foreign language. I just wouldn't understand what the hell they're talking about with that Fractal stuff. But I mean, that being said, man, the way Ken Andrews has just completely mastered that stuff, and I know that the Jimmy Eat World guys are using it now, and it's just like it's a game changer. Like it's game changer technology for sure.
It's funny because like our show thrives on the setups like you have that we already went over, but as we go out to more and more of these, hopefully in the near future, a lot of those guys are touring with that kind of setup, which almost makes our show not obsolete, but it definitely makes it a lot more succinct, we'll say.
So what kind of dummy cab do you have over here for this one? I mean, going direct into house with Fractal, if they're playing pavilions, arenas, or like anything 3,000 plus, it just makes sense. But for me, and all those guys are doing in-ears, and I get it that's what their stage needs are. It makes total sense to me. But there's something about being on stage and feeling the air move behind you, and like just softly patting you on the back, like good tone, man. Like I love that.
Should we move on to
I guess that leads into bass.
Yeah, that leads us right to bass, man. Should we talk about Kevin's setup?
Yeah. So Kevin, for Black Clouds, I used the Sun 1200S forever, and that was like the head for me. It was just so perfect. And the thing is they would die all the time. So like I guess there was issues with the heat sink in them, and since they're two pre-solid state posts, the solid state amps would crap out all the time. And I went through probably 5 or 6 of those things. Like they would just, once they're dead, you can't fix them. I know Fender makes the 1200S. After Fender bought Sun, they took the exact same model, same schematic, fixed the heat sink, and it's great. But I was never able to find those, ever. I would search Reverb forever. Sometimes they were insanely priced and everything of the sorts. So what I used for a long time, and Kevin's been using, is Orange, which I think they stopped making, the 4-stroke 500. Which,
I believe so.
Yeah, man. The compression on that thing and the EQ on that thing just replicates everything I loved about the Sun 1200S. So Alex, when he was at Orange, was kind enough to help me out with the 4-stroke 500, and it changed everything, and I loved it. It's great. But just literally 3 weeks ago was at Atomic Music in Beltsville, and just digging through the stack of the graveyard of cabinets and amps that they have there, and found a Fender 1200S and played it. Sounded great, worked fine, brought it in, and we did the ABY test on it, and it's just like no brainer. like we're going to use this, but we keep the Orange around all the time in case Fender didn't actually work out that heat sink deal. So yeah, I mean the graphic EQ on it is great. Everything about it is just like massive and thunderous, and the main sound is pretty just like clean, like loud PA sort of sound. But Ryan from Fuzzrocious was kind enough. This is like 10 years ago. He built me this perfect pedal that was kind of a TS 808 circuit that had a couple little switches that I couldn't even really figure out what they do, but he knew what they did. And I was like, hey, can you make this but add a blend knob to it? And he did, and I had that pedal. It's not on there, but as soon as I was able to afford to get a clone made, I got the clone made, and it has the dude from Phantasm on it. I just thought, like, Shannon's artwork at Fuzzrocious is always amazing. So that's his like main dirt. I guess the bass to start with, before even going into the pedal, is probably most important. I played P basses for the longest time. When I went to Chicago Music Exchange in 2016, I think it was, for Riot Fest, I went to CME, and in the basement they had a couple of Dunable basses, and I picked one up and was just like, oh my god, like I've never played anything like this. So this is one of the earlier ones. He made this in 2017, according to the serial number. And this was one of those things where I didn't know what I wanted to do, really. I just knew I wanted one of his basses, but I didn't. I probably would have changed the fretboard to ebony or something like that. But it's rosewood fretboard, Wenge neck, and swamp ash body. There's a little bit of neck dive, but Kevin's pretty animated on stage, so he actually works with it pretty well.
Okay.
And going from P-Bass, I just knew that I loved P-Bass pickups. I love the punchiness of it, but I wanted to try one of his Bigfoots. And I don't know if it's a mistake or what, but like the bridge pickup on here is so deep and so warm that it sounds like the neck pickup of a neck pickup sort of thing. It's crazy, where the P-Bass is like, does its thing so well, but just setting it and forgetting it with like right in the middle there is just like just like perfect tone, where like bridge is like, see, it's like kind of warm, and then the P-Bass is like a little thinner, but right in the middle there, like a little out of tune, but just crushing. It's everything I wanted out of a bass. The neck, I kept saying I wanted like even thinner than a jazz bass neck if possible, and it is the thinnest neck ever, but it feels great. It's the fastest neck I've ever played, and I love this thing. I'm obsessed with this bass, and it's so light. The balance is great, with the exception of a little bit of neck dive, but I think that's, again, learning curve for me when I was like, I want this.
Yeah.
Like, not putting too much thought into it. But yeah, he hit it out of the park with this one. So yeah, the first thing in the signal chain is the first thing in the signal chain is this Fuzzrocious custom build, and it's just like super transparent. It has the blend knob, so I would always find with almost every bass drive, gain, distortion pedal, you just lose that low end right the second you turn it on. This fixed all that, and I love it. And I've been using that pedal for over 10 years now, and it's awesome that it's being still used in this way. The original one is not the guy from Phantasm. The original one is Shannon painted what's the guy from Total Recall, the little guy, Quado?
Oh, yeah.
She painted Quado to look like the Ultimate Warrior.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's pretty great, but it's sitting on a shelf at home where I'm kind of just like, this is too special to me to like take it out or let it get spilled on or anything like that.
From parts unknown, man.
Yeah. The next one, like I said, we're getting ready to record in just a couple weeks. So his board is kind of like messy, and because we're changing out stuff every practice, like pedal wise, what we're like, this sounds good for this song, this doesn't, so we know exactly what we're going in with. Sometimes we're using the 4-stroke 500, sometimes we're using the Fender 1200. It just depends on what the song needs, and that's what we're fine-tuning right now. So when we go into the studio, since we're not a band that's like, yeah, we have this place for 3 months, like let's bring the children's choir in, or like bring a cow in, or like this. We're looking at the watch and we're trying to make the most of it. So that's why we're switching stuff around. But one of the ones, which is Fuzzrocious Sea Demon, I believe is what we legally have to refer to it as now. It's similar to another pedal that has something C-D in there. And when it was called The Demon forever ago, I was like, oh, can you put my favorite demon on there? So it's Bob from Twin Peaks as like the, that's that, but it's a demon pedal with a gated boost mod on it, as well as a blend knob. And that thing is just a little more chainsaw than the custom build one that he made for me. And when you throw that gate on there for anything that's just like anything like that, it's just like the way it closes that gate is just awesome. The next in his chain is the original Sanford and Sonny Bluebeard, which is it's the best. Like it's the best pedal. This is before he added the tone bypass switch on there or anything like that. And that I remember seeing, I think it was Young Widows live, and just seeing this pedal. It's just like an old beat up gray enclosure with like this bright blue dot. I was like, what is that? Found out what it was through Talk Bass forums, and found myself putting my name on many waiting lists in the DC area to get one of these if they ever popped up in a store secondhand. And I got a call 2 years later that was like, hey,
wow,
we finally got one. Like, you're up. So I went in, snagged it right away. And I'm not joking. We played 2 shows with that thing. And it was in my drummer, Jimmy's car. And car got broken into and stolen.
Wow.
And then serendipitously, this guy that I work with was like, oh, I think I know the guy that makes those. Let me send him a message and see if it's him. And then I got on the phone with Sonny from Sanford and Sonny Bluebeards, and he was like, dude, I heard what happened. Like, how can I help? I was like, I'd love to buy another one. And he made me one that was just like perfect. And I was showing it off the other night. It's fastened to the board right now, but I like took the back plate off of it and stuff, and like there's his phone number, there's like a nice note and everything, and he sent it in a box filled with comics, like a bunch of watches and like all sorts of other stuff. And I was like, dude, what's up with the watches? He's like, I don't know, man, like if you retire, just give them out, or go to a retirement party and just hand them to people, do whatever. But yeah, I've had that same pedal forever, and I've since bought a couple different Bluebeards, mainly because I saw 665 was for sale, number 665. I was like, dude, I want 666. He's like, that belongs to Pig Destroyer.
Of course.
But I got 665. So
Can we hear this pedal?
What's that?
Can we hear it?
Yeah.
Because I've never even heard of this pedal, let alone heard it.
Okay.
I've never heard of it or heard it in practice.
Yeah, so the Bluebeard, this is it. You definitely should, at some point in time, feel this thing instead of just hear this thing, because I know, like myself included, watch a lot of these on my phone sometimes or anything of the sorts, or on my laptop. So it's not really made for laptop speakers, but if the camera rattles, you could probably get a sense of it. But it's just like the low end of just like the... it's just devastating. And when you stack it with the other one, it's like you could get like crazy feedback squeals if you want to. I'll save yours on that, but like, and it's just, for some reason, it just doesn't lose any low end in the mix. And I remember playing a show with, we weren't playing with Dillinger, but Liam from Dillinger was there. We were up in Philly, and I hit that one on at the end of a set one time, and he was like, dude, what the fuck was that? So it's the Sanford Sonny. Now they're made, man, I forget her name, she is the bassist for Multicult. She has now taken over production of the Sanford Sonny ones, because Sonny is now a realtor and stuff like that. He still builds every once in a while, and if you could find them. They rarely pop up on Reverb, and when they do, they are gone like that.
Wow.
And then after that, it's he runs into the head rush, just delay. I like the analog delay part of it quite a bit, but there's a couple things that we've been doing that require more digital delay stuff, where it's much more rhythmic and you could hear it and stuff. But for me, like I'm a fan of delay and bass on Reverb, especially like the kind of ice delay from a timeline, and like a nice shimmer verb or something like that. Because we're one of those dorky bands that like every once in a while we'll do like the cello bow to get like those weird sounds. And the analog delay captures it without having to use a reverb pedal for what we're doing, at least right now. And then after that, the last thing is just this little tiny kill switch. And that is just a signal killer, where it's just, we have some things where it's just, the noise just crescendos, it's delayed out, it's crazy, and instead of having any trails, I'm able to stomp on a blank patch on the ES8. He's able to stomp on this little thing, and Matt's able to just switch effects. So, like, you get that, like, it's almost kind of like a reverse cymbal sound, where it's just a cacophony of white noise and delayed out feedback and everything that just stops on the dime. So it's pretty cool. And especially if it's going into one of these two heads, it just is devastating. So
who got the head rush first? Was it you or Mike Sullivan? Because I know he's a big fan of the head rush stuff.
Yeah. Brian Cook. I remember seeing, we played my old band with Kevin years ago, played a show with These Arms Are Snakes. And I remember, what was that song? Idaho? Is that what it's called? Where it's just like, Brian's playing a mini Korg on it, but he would pre-track a one-hit loop on it with the head rush. And now both of those guys are, I know they stopped making them. They're buying them like whenever they see them. And one of my favorite stories about it, and both Mike and Dave told this story on my podcast, is to switch between delay, the digital and the analog, and the looper, because it has a looper built in. You just push both buttons at the same time. So red is looper, green is analog, yellow is regular digital delay. They did, Russian Circles always has a lot of crazy stuff happening with their transitions in between songs. And they did a tour where they were like, all right, well, since Dave can't see us through the fog, or we don't have a mic, we don't really communicate, why don't we have a thing where, since we each have an extra head rush, we don't start the next song until we turn it to the green setting. So that's a green light for Dave to start the next song. Otherwise, it's on red and stuff like that. And there was a show that they played where Mike had just like severely injured himself, like before their set even started, and was just like, I don't think I'm going to make it through this show and stuff like that. Many other things happened during that show, and I'll save you the full scope of the story, but they were about to, like, Mike was just like ready to not be on stage and just kind of was like, all right, let's go. And Dave was like, turn your little light on. You made the stupid rule. Now you got to stick with it. So it's hard for me to look at these things without laughing. And honestly, the one that I like to swap in and out a lot, I had it on my board for a while, and I'm going to hopefully convince Kevin to do it, is the DoD rubberneck, because you could add some gain to the delay, but you also have the regeneration hold knob, which is just like for weird noises. It's kind of like one of those SIB Mr. Echo pedals where you could speed it up, slow it down, or whatever. And I think they called it the slam function. Same thing. So, yeah.
Cool, man. Well, if people want to check out your stuff, I know that Cinema Shame is already out there, you know, in a video format, so people can check that out. But as your guys, I think the plan is to kind of release music leading up to a full release, so like song here, song there. If people want to keep tabs on that, where should they go, and how should they check online?
Yeah, so we're working with Dark Operative Records. So you know, Brent is just amazing. He's working with Caspian, worked with Power Trip, works with This Will Destroy You. So it's an incredible family to be a part of. We have more than an LP's worth of stuff that we've been sitting on, and we literally were like, all right, let's fucking do this. And we played 2 shows. First show was okay. Second show was sold out, and then pandemic happened, and we're like, all right, nothing's happening now. So we're like, we're not going to put out an album right now, because I knew last year, I was like, this is going to go on for well over a year. Like we're not even near the end of this. So we put any LP plans on pause, but we still wanted to put stuff out. We're like, well, why don't we just do songs every once in a while? If people want to binge an entire album like they binge Tiger King, they're going to forget about it in a month. But if we do the Mandalorian or WandaVision version where it's like, oh, like here's a new episode sort of thing, maybe it works out. I don't know, but not all these songs are going to be on the full length. We're just kind of putting them out one by one, and then we'll have a full length ready to go to support and everything after we are at a healthy, vaccinated world level sort of thing. But yeah, at Burial Waves, I'm pretty much, if you type Burial Waves, it's pretty easy to find us on any of the platforms.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't suggest again, if you're a fan of comedy and guitar, please check out Rigs of Dad, because that is a great follow. It's a game between myself and Perry and other people that follow the same things, like between that, Rigs of Shit, Rigs of Doom, where it's almost like who can like it first, or like hardtimes.net, and then send it to the other friends.
Oh yeah.
And so it's like, man, I love what you do, and keep doing it, and I love Burial Waves too. I can't wait to hear the rest of the stuff.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that, and thank you for having me. Any chance I have to talk nerdy gear stuff, I'm like so game.
All right, for Ross out in DC, for myself in Nashville, keep rocking and stay safe, everyone.
Later.